Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast, is brought to you by, well, you. If you want to learn how to support our show, go to patreon.com/laststandmedia. Greetings and salutations. Welcome back to Sacred Symbols Plus, a PlayStation podcast supplement. My name is Colin Moriarty. Today, I'm joined by a guest who pitched me to come on the show. Actually, I pitched him to come on the show after he told me a lot about what was going on out there with a story that I really wanted to know a lot about. So we went back and forth, and lo and behold, here he is. His name is Ty Richardson. Ty, welcome to the show, my friend. How are you?
I am doing just fantastic, man. It's been a heck of a week, a heck of a month, too, going into this. But I went and had my dentist appointment yesterday. No cavities. I'm feeling great.
Awesome.
Had an awesome dinner to celebrate, and now Pac-Man World Remake is out. I'm ready to just play nothing but that for the whole weekend.
I saw that. There's very little coming out, and I saw that on Push Square's, the coming this week list. I was like, oh yeah, I forgot that was coming. Congratulations! It's always good to have good dental health. I'm a two dental visits a year kind of guy myself. Mm-hmm. Got to take care of that stuff. So congratulations, big deal.
Thank you.
Well done.
I was a train wreck when I was sitting in that office. I'm like, oh.
What, you don't like going?
I don't like going just because when I was a kid, like the dentist always pushed, we got to get you braces. We got to get you braces. Let me try and ask your parents to pay $6,000 for braces. And it's like, I don't need that, man. I know it's all jacked up in here, but up there it's fine. And
your teeth are constantly moving anyway, and you have options later on. I got Invisalign like later in my life, and it was totally like the easiest thing in the world.
Oh, so, yeah, that's what my mom uses too.
Yeah.
She's like, it's great. I just snap the tray in and
yeah, it's totally great. It was totally fun. So options galore. Good dental health. Congratulations. All right, here we are. This podcast, Sacred Symbols Plus, this episode not about dental health. Maybe we'll do that one day. I don't know how that would fit into our show, but in the meantime, I wanted to invite you on, and I was actually looking at our email here because what happened was you had reached out on Patreon to kind of share some findings that you had been cobbling together, kind of like a freelance journalist out there, cobbling together notes about a problem that I feel like is pretty prolific on the PlayStation Network right now. We talk about a lot on our show, which is that the store is just inundated with garbage. And it's becoming worse and worse. It's something that I've been talking about for years. I've been afraid of this happening. I feel like I've been totally vindicated for people that have been listening to me for years, talking about this and fending off contrary opinions and the Adam Boyces of the world that would want to come on the show and argue with me about how the store should let anyone they want on and make the barrier as low as possible. Well, we're seeing the fruits of that. The PlayStation Store is a fucking disaster. And you, Ty, reached out to me because you said you were doing some research. So I turned it on you and said, would you like to come on the show and kind of present it to me? I also wanted to open it up to Brian, my friend Brian over at PS Trophies, who I know is also kind of doing some work, but I have not heard from him, which is kind of weird. I emailed him this week and he didn't email me back after a couple of proddings. My assumption is that he's heads down in The Last of Us Remastered, or The Last of Us Part 1, which is necessary for his trophy business. So I understand that. But you are missed. I'm thinking about you, Brian, if you're listening to this. But in the meantime, Ty, I wanted to kind of hand it over to you. You presented me with this kind of notion. I actually went to this Reddit post that you had posted and I glossed over it. I didn't want to read too deeply because I really want you to present to me what you've discovered about the shovelware on PlayStation Network. I should note, I mean, I guess this is kind of obvious, but it's fair to note that when I invite people on the show, I guess I can't vouch for the information they're saying or their opinions or whatever. However, I want to give you this platform because I think you might have some interesting findings to share. So I've said a lot here. Talk to me about what you've discovered, why you wanted to get into looking at this, and who you even are, and why you wanted to get involved into this at all. Because I think it's really interesting that no one of any repute, I should say, right? Like at the big outlets, or they don't seem to care about this at all. And that's disappointing. So I've pitched everyone and set you up. Talk to me a little bit about what's going on.
So I have been working as a freelance, not exactly journalist, but a writer for Watch Mojo for the last 6 years. And I also do like long play archive. I do video game long plays for them. But
I love that YouTube channel. I was just watching it earlier today, by the way.
Long play archive.
Yeah, it was. Are you guys the big ones on YouTube? Long play archive.
That's World of Long Plays.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Yeah, that might be. It might have been you guys. I don't know. I was watching an NES run through of Lethal Weapon.
Wow,
which was really rough. But anyway, I digress. Go on.
So yeah, I do that, but last month I kind of hit a breaking point with the shovelware. I don't know what it was, but I was just what I like to do is every week, every like Tuesday or Friday, sometimes both, I'll go on PlayStation Store, I'll reorganize the listings to let me see what's just been released. All right. I'll go watch trailers, look at screenshots, see if there's a game that I want to pick up because I like to champion the indie devs, and I feel like a lot of them don't get enough attention, especially a lot of the ones that still go through like Devolver Digital, and I won't ramble on too much about that part, but I like to drop money, explore my tastes, and see what's up, you know? And there was just one day last month where I'm looking there and I'm like, holy hell, I can't find anything. Like, Cult of the Lamb comes out a couple weeks ago, right? Fantastic game, by the way. If you haven't played it, you should definitely go check it out.
I saw it already sold 1 million copies.
That is awesome. Amazing.
Yeah.
Huge congrats to the devs. But I was like, I even had trouble finding that, and I knew the game was out that day. I'm like going through Jumping Burger, or whatever the hell. And I just hit, last month when I was going through this, I just hit a point where I'm like, I am so tired of this. That, like, we need to figure out who these people are, like, right now, and get this out there. And so I made the Reddit post saying, like, this needs to stop, right? And unfortunately, I was met with some backlash from the people within that subreddit, which was kind of disheartening because it just showed me, like, are there really not a lot of people who care about this? Like, I remember there was one person who commented who was like, you do realize this is giving them more publicity, right? And I'm like, good. This should give them more publicity because they are legitimately harming this market for not just PlayStation and AAA devs, but the smaller guys too. The guys who are putting in effort to their games. So I started this, I started listing out like all of the companies that we'll go through one at a time and started kind of digging into their company websites, their social media stuff, the whole 9 yards. But there's a lot to go through. If I don't elaborate on something, and you want to know more about it, please just let me know.
Okay. All right. Let me stop you.
I got going on.
Let me stop you before you even go further.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to say I agree. I did notice some of the comments on the Reddit thread, and I should say that I have a bias in this sense from multiple angles as we go into it. I am a game developer, so I have a huge bias there, and I'm an expert in PlayStation. Like, this is the sphere I've been in for many years, and I think it's very bad it portends bad things for PlayStation, and I've been saying that for a long time. So I want to say that I'm on your side, obviously, but I find the antithetical sort of argument saying, what's the big deal? Everyone should be. I find that actually so brain dead as to be. I'm aghast that people can even think that about the PlayStation Store at this point, how they can look at Sony's insistence in recent weeks that they want to lower the barrier of entry to get games on PlayStation Network. Do you have any idea how low the barrier of entry already is? It costs you a couple $1,000 basically. And you just have to, you used to even have to, as you know, and I'm sure you'll explain this to everyone, you used to have to pitch your games to PlayStation as an independent developer, kind of frame it, be like, this is what it is, this is what we want to charge, this is how you do it, you kind of submit it. They don't really have crazy rules, but they would look at it and assess it, and they would send it back, and usually you would get allowed on. You don't even have to do that anymore. So really, you just have to make your game, which is easy to bring between PS4 and PS5 and other consoles, and put it up. And I just, so before you go on, I just want to say I'm totally on your side on this. I think it's fucking bullshit. And I think these companies suck. I think what they're doing is selfish and wrong. I think that what they're doing doesn't even make any sense since their games are so cheap and sell so few copies that they can't even be making any money. So they're just hurting everybody that actually makes real games. And it's not even a quality issue so much that it's a clear commercial issue. You shouldn't be allowed to do this. And it doesn't come from someone, it's like, oh, well, maybe your game should have sold more. Maybe your game should have been, well, it's like every time you have to press over on the PlayStation Network one more time, you lose someone. Every time you have to, when something else comes up on a search bar that doesn't belong there, you lose someone. It's fucked. And I speak to a lot of developers, a lot of smaller developers, and they are mad about what's going on PlayStation Network, not only in this regard, but in many other regards over the last few years. So with that, I wanted to put that bias out there and let you know I hate these motherfuckers that are doing this. I don't even know who they are yet. So talk to me about what you found and what some of your findings are.
So the first companies that I want to go over, and I'm grouping them together for a very specific reason. So there are 3 companies that I started out with because these are the ones I was most suspicious of. We're talking about Webnetics SRO, Zakim SRO, that's spelled Zakim, and Clovico SRO, which is newer than the other ones. Now, I started with these guys because I was like, it's really weird. I've never seen a company attach SRO at the end of their name. And I started thinking back to the days of Digital Homicide, back when they were flooding the Steam store with their nonsense.
Right, I forgot about those guys. I totally forgot about Digital Homicide. Yeah, go on.
Yeah, for those who are unaware, Digital Homicide, they were known for the Slaughtering Grounds, and they started a huge feud with Jim Sterling. And Jim Sterling would talk about them so much that they eventually started to try and come up with fake company names to keep adding more garbage to Steam. So upon seeing these 3 SROs, I was like, why do I have the feeling that this might be a way more isolated issue than it seems like? So I started digging through the SROs, and I got some help with my colleague, Caitlin Johnson. They really gave me a lot of pointers and helped me dig up registry stuff and showed me, if you're going to be looking into this, you should really be looking at this kind of stuff, right? So I went with what they suggested. And for the founders of Webnetics, didn't have to look super deep into it, but this is a company owned by Matej Makri and Michael Barna. And just FYI, before I continue, I do not condone doxing of any kind. That is a very shitty practice.
Oh, of course. I mean, that goes without saying. Our audience knows better than that. Yeah, but that goes without saying. Well, Ty's presenting this information. I'm listening and I'm taking notes along with the rest of you. I mean, I don't know any of this stuff. So, but yeah, that goes without saying. This is being presented in a journalistic sense, and you should use common sense in your reaction to it.
Yeah. So, anyways, Webnetics is owned by Matej Makri and Michael Barna. They are in Slovak Republic. At least that is where we figured it out. They're in Slovakia, basically, right? And this is where things started to get weird, is when I started looking to Zakim and Clovico. So Zakim was also based in Slovakia, yet didn't have hang on a sec. I got my notes all over the place here. So Zakim is based in Slovakia. Clovico is based in Czechia, but has in the Slovakian registry. In the Slovakia registry, they have an address in Slovakia, yet they're based in Czechia, right? I'm like, that doesn't make a lick of sense. And then on top of that, in the registry, the owners of Clovico have the same last names as the owners of Webnetics. So we have a Makri and a Barna owning both of those companies. As for Zakim, though, 2 completely different people. David Hrebizek and Martin Ziduliak. Forgive me if I don't know anything about Slovakian or any kind of European naming. But, and now somebody would suggest, like, oh, maybe Makri and Barna are common last names, which, fair point, up until I saw the addresses of these owners, they're the exact same address for both of them. Which I'm like, that's no coincidence.
No.
There's something funny going on here.
So have you reached out to any of these people to try to further probe who they are? Try to use an email address you might come across or a web link?
I have not. I'll straight up admit that. I figured if I was to email any of these people, none of them would really want to talk to me.
Oh my God, I'll fucking email these people. Yeah, I'm writing all this down now. It's like, I'm curious to take the baton in some way and see what they'll say for themselves, because why even separate there's no limit to the amount of games theoretically you can put on PlayStation Network. So what is the point of even having these different entities? Seems a little strange to me. So I would want to ask at least about that.
Well, this is where things got even stranger, is that my colleague and I found out that Slovakia has like this sort of incentive for you to start up a company there.
Mm-hmm.
They have, I don't know what it's called, but it's basically a grant where if you can't afford, getting a certain amount of capital, they will give you the money to start up the company up to $100,000, but they will only give you $5,000 in the first increment. From there, you have to prove to them that you are making some kind of profit. I don't know how frequently that threshold has to be crossed, but but just that alone, I was like, okay, clearly there's got to be some exploitation going on in here, just within the government system.
Well, it's safe to presume that that's a possibility. I wouldn't necessarily say that for sure. That would be one of the biggest questions I would have, because that's not necessarily that unusual. It's unusual to take advantage of it like this. But for instance, in Canada, especially in Quebec, but in other provinces as well, they're loose and crazy with the money up there to give the game developers and indie developers, to keep them there, employ people there, employ artists, programmers. And I was just seeing funny enough, Kurt Schilling trending a few days ago on Twitter, because 38 Studios had come up again, his now defunct studio that was given like $75 million by the government of Rhode Island. So people are getting money in all these different ways. It's interesting. So this is a distinct possibility, and that's what I would want to ask them. The most, if I were to reach out to them and talk to them, it's just like, what is the purpose of these different entities, and is this potential Slovakian incubation fund, is that kind of something you're looking at? Or there's a lot of threads here. That's really interesting. So good work so far. So we have this set up. So where do we go from here?
So I focused in on those guys, right? But the one that I wanted to nail down first, like before any of these guys, but this was sort of like, this one got caught up in the mix because I was just tracking down locations at first, right? And then seeing where I go from there. But the next one is called The Games. These are the people behind the jumping games,
Yes.
The jumping brownie. I don't have to go through it all with you. But my only lead on it was they are located in Germany. And that was it for a while. It was driving me up the wall. And I started poking around at their social media, at their company page, which I had to do just a little bit of digging for. And I couldn't even find them on the registry either, on the German registry. Like, I think their organization's called the Federal Gazette, right? I could be wrong.
For the corporate entities? Yeah, I don't know anything about that in Germany at all.
I don't either. Totally. I just, when I was looking it up, I'm like, that's the most official looking, so I'll give it a shot. Came up with nothing. So I was back to the drawing board, going to their company webpage, and they have this weird section of things that they kind of like, not to say it harshly, but they kind of brag about. Like, they claim that they're partners with Nintendo, Sony, and Microsoft, and I'm like, you don't publish anything on anywhere except for PlayStation, yet you're saying you're a partner for Microsoft and Nintendo? What?
They might have gotten dev kits and not published yet. It could be possible that me not knowing enough about these other storefronts compared to PlayStation Store, it could be possible that it might be harder to get these games on those stores too.
Possibly.
Which is really a disgrace, because the Switch especially is a disaster as well. So,
oh yeah.
Okay. So, but by the way, I wanted to ask you about the previous, because you brought up Webnetic, Klavico, and Zachem. And then we're talking about the games now, which is THIGAMES. I'm looking at your Reddit thread, so that's how I'm keeping up and writing these notes. How many games have been released by these different entities? Because I kind of want to put a fine point on it for people to know how many games these guys have published and in what period of time, and why this is inherently a problem. So do you have those kinds of statistics? I see it here in the post for the games, but I'm wondering if you have the numbers for all the others as well.
Referring to for some of the other ones, S Mobile, which we'll get to in a little bit, they've published at least 75 games and have at least 250 trophy lists, according to Moby Games and PSN Profiles.
Yeah, that's a fucking disgrace. I mean, that's insane. That's just totally gaming the system.
And then this for the games, we have first published game was Mr. Hibble on PC. That was a game that they put out for PC, Mac, and Linux. First came out in October 2020. Was published on Steam, which I also checked out. has 3 Steam reviews, 2 of which are only positive because it has tons of achievements.
Oh, okay.
That's in those reviews' words. And yes, the game has over 100 achievements, and that's the game's selling point too. Like, if you go on the Steam page, it's right at the top. I'm like, you know what the incentive here is.
And that vibes a little more with Steam's whole rationale, right? Like, we're very libertarian and laissez-faire. We let anyone do what they want, and the user tools bury all the bad games. It's the problem is that PlayStation Store has none of those user tools, so none of the bad games get buried. That's why I don't really care about Steam, because they're so user focused that it doesn't really matter what's being published on the store. What's important, what they want your money. That's what's so confusing about this. You think Sony would be like, whatever point A to point B, the quickest route between those two things to get your money is what we'll do. And we would, and to get rid of the $1.49 games in which we make, what are they making? 45 cents a game?
Yeah, something like that.
I mean, are you kidding me? So it's just incredible. So we're talking about hundreds of games between these entities and potentially maybe 1,000 stacks of trophies, which is insanity. So you were going to bring up S Mobile, but I also wanted to ask you about Breakthrough Gaming as well. I want to make sure not to forget them, just because that's the only company that I've tried to vet out and reach out to, and I did reach out to them. They did not reach out back to me. And I've got a grudge against these dudes because I feel like they were maybe the first ones to be exploiting this in a major way. I say Kemco was the prototype originally because they were releasing all their like RPG Maker RPGs, but that's quaint as hell. Like that they can do whatever they want at this point. That's not anything compared to what these guys are doing. So can you talk to me a little bit about Breakthrough Gaming, which ostensibly seems like a Christian company to me?
Right. That's where I sort of got a question. I know this makes me seem like a horrible person, but I have to question the identity behind the intent, you know? So Breakthrough Gaming, I found out they are based in Utah, which, according to my friends who are religious, Utah is a notoriously Mormon state.
Oh yeah, that's the headquarters of Mormonism, for sure.
I had no idea. I've never been to Utah. I don't know.
Utah was founded by the people that founded Mormonism founded the state of Utah. So,
interesting.
Yeah. So Salt Lake City is like the capital city of Mormonism around the world. So yeah, there could be a connection. Yeah.
Okay. I unfortunately wasn't able to come across any specific names, so that's why the entry on them on my Reddit thread is so short. But I did look into like what else they do, because they kind of hint somewhere on their webpage that, oh, we also sell Christian movies and TV shows and stuff. And I looked on there. They're basically just a secondhand Amazon store where they're selling Bible Man and Veggie Tales and 321 Penguins or whatever. So the trail kind of went cold for me there. I'm sure somebody can dig up something more on that end. But I just, I didn't know where else to look on that one. Call me incompetent, but...
No, I don't think it's incompetent, but I did find a contact when I was looking into them a few months ago, and so it was like a web form. So who even knows if it got to its destination? But I just wrote that I would love to talk to you on Sacred Symbols Plus, our PlayStation podcast. You publish an obscene amount of games on PlayStation, so I'd like to know like who my whole thing, and you listen to Sacred, so you might know, and people that out there listen know. It's like my whole thing really is like, who do you think you are?
Yeah,
like who do you think you are? Putting so many games on the PlayStation Store, bumping everyone else's games around like they're nothing.
Right.
And I'll say, you could say what you want about our games at Lilimo. You can say what you want about Herbroxy or Twinbreaker or, Perils. They're a million times better than these games. Like hands down, no question, much more expensive to make, much more sophisticated. And we're a very small indie studio. So imagine the bigger studios that put more money and more time and more effort and the outcomes are even better. They're also getting buried. Everyone's getting buried by these games that cost no money, that seem to have no profit motive. It's sinister. It seems weird to me. Like, I don't know who you think you are, other than maybe a few thousand people buying them for trophies. And I think that even then, it's ruining trophy hunting, which is another thing that I wanted to bring up as well. And we'll talk about that in a little while. But we've come a long way, Ty, since the PS3 days, where you really had to work for your trophies, and the easy trophy game still took you like 20 hours. I remember when a game came out and I was like, oh, where the wild things are. But you got to play it all the way through and get all the collectibles, but you can do it. Or, Tango or whatever, like weird shit. Like,
yeah,
I don't understand where they get off, and that's why I want to talk to them too, because I'm a journalist in some sense, but I'm an advocate and a critic and all these things, and I have questions. So I'll reach out to these guys again too. I'm kind of curious to follow up with them as well. But what else? Actually, before we get off of Breakthrough Gaming, do they have the most number of games, or is it one of these other companies?
I think from my findings, I would probably argue it's got to be one of the other games. But there's still a couple of things with like the games, not to wrestle control from you or anything, but there's still a few things from the games that I wanted to touch on.
Yeah, no. Oh, please, no, go back. Yeah, let's do it.
But so the games, they launched their first game on PC, right? And I think and they've developed 15 games since they started like shoveling their stuff onto PlayStation Store. April 29th, 2022 is when they started. And between then and now, they've published 15 games. And that's only me counting, like, IP specific. So there's a ton more to unearth there. But the weird thing that I found with them is that on that same page where they're bragging about how they're partners with Nintendo or whatever, they also had this weird blurb on the side that was like, we are also the proud owners of one of the largest GTA fan sites in Germany, GTAplanet.de. I'm like, that's a really weird thing to be promoting on your company website. And I'd be lying if I didn't say I was impressed, you know? Because I'm reading about the history, the about us, and looking through this website, right? And for the dedication that this person had for GTA going all the way back to 2001, I'm like, mad props to you.
Yeah, sites are long-running fan sites are dope. Each series that I really like Mega Man, Castlevania, like each of those has one really well-respected one. Like Mega Man homepage is the Mega Man one, and so on and so forth. So it's cool that people do that stuff, but it is weird. And it says here with your Reddit post, the game's 54 individual titles with their own listings. I mean, so even with stacks, that's just an insane amount of real estate to be taking up. It's not acceptable.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. So in my time trying to identify the owner, though, I can't tell you how many websites I was trying to jump through, and the answer was right there in front of my face. In one of those sort of about or copyright legal kind of pages, the owner's name, address, email address, everything was right there. Othylo Kruczek of Nuremberg, Germany. Interesting.
So he owns this GTA Planet website, and then he owns this The Games as well. I'd be interested to talk to him too. I'm going to try to find contact information for some of these guys over the coming days. And people are watching this because they're kind of watching me do some of the stuff that I do in real time, I guess. But I'm trying to take some appropriate notes so we can follow these threads and see what else we should find. And I was looking at a good way to know what's coming on the PlayStation Store in terms of a feed. So what PlayStation Store shows you, even if you order everything, as you know, even if you order everything newest to oldest, it's going to show you all of the paid pre-order stuff first and all of the paid advertisements first, because you can pay to get your games bumped up onto these lists and all the rest. And even if you announce a game and add it to the PSN as a database entry, it'll pop up there. And so you have to work your way through all of that. But a good way to see the actual live feed of games that are being uploaded is to look at their trophies. And doing this is PSN profiles is the place to do it. And if you look now, there's probably, I think, what do they show here on each page? It's something like 40 entries, I think, per page. And half of them are these games.
Yeah.
Monument Journey Nitro, the Jumping Coffee Turbo, the Button B, Desert Journey, Drift Journey Nitro, the Volleyball B, the Jumping Pasta, the Jumping Pasta Turbo. There's 6 entries, I think, for the Jumping Pasta. Fump Jump is one of them.
It's ridiculous, man.
It's fucking insane. Like, I do not understand what Sony is thinking.
Like, this is the reason why I started investigating it, because, like, even before I go onto PlayStation Store and look for new games, I always log on PSN profiles to see what's coming up. Something that I may not have seen on YouTube, something that's just not getting any traffic, right? And then I just flood of Tump Jump, Flump Jump, Jumping Burger Turbo, Snow Journey, Plow Journey, Monster Truck Journey, whatever the hell. And it's gotta stop, man. It's gotta stop.
I wonder. I want to. So really, the big. So according to you, according to your research here, Webnetic, Clavico, Zachem, V Games, Breakthrough Gaming. These are the ones. S Mobile or Smobile. And then what about Asynta? You have a company here. Are they another target of our inquiries?
This was a company that I wanted to, I guess, target, but you get what I mean there. I was trying to like find out who these people were before we went and recorded this. Unfortunately, this is another company where the trail went super cold for me. I did find out that the company is based in Czechia. They are way smaller compared to the rest. They only started uploading games late last month, so they're still somewhat young. But I do notice that they upload something every single week, whether it's a game, 2 games, even 3 games. And it seems to all be these sort of a little more story driven, but they don't look impressive at all from the trailers and screenshots that I see.
Talk to me about the pricing on these various games. Are they charging? I was looking, is it like usually $1.49 or somewhere in that pocket? What are the various prices they're exploring? Because it's hard for me to, honest to God, it's hard for me to see why you would do this at all. Like, what is the financial purpose? Even if your company is based in Slovakia, a place with, I'm just going off the top of my head, probably a third the per capita income of the United States. So you would theoretically need a third of the amount of money to live there. You're still not even getting anywhere close to that with the amount of money you're making on the PlayStation Store. It's like not even close. So I know you were talking about the fund and all of those kinds of things, but how much are they charging for these games?
So the SRO companies, I notice all 3 of them charge somewhat the same. I have yet to see any of their games go above, I'm being generous here, $2. But on average, I see $1.49.
So $1.49. So yeah, so even if they're charging $2, that's 60 cents for Sony, $1.40 gross for them. Okay, so they would have to sell. So that's, I mean, if you sold 5,000 copies, that's $7,500. I mean, that's awful. I mean, you can't survive on that. I don't get it. So
and the other thing too is that these are companies that are owned by 2 people, right? So that $7,500 that you mentioned, split that between the 2, that's $37.50. Is my math right?
I think so.
So, and that's still like, I don't see how that's, profitable even as an individual, really. Well, I also, it's worth mentioning, I also don't know what kind of economy Slovakia has. I don't know what the cost of living there is exactly. I don't know how their taxes work. So
I mean, I'll look right now. I mean, Slovakia, they have their nominal GDP is 59th in the world. Per capita income is 47th at 23,000. So it's even actually worse, my comparison, because their economy is actually better compared to America than I thought. It's more like half maybe as opposed to a third. So it makes it even more unrealistic to make any money on that, which is why I think your insight into the possibility of getting some sort of funding from the government there might be something into that. And again, that happens in many countries that produce great games, and I'm sure great games come out of Slovakia too. So it's nothing against them, but I'm curious, why didn't you want to reach out to any of these guys? I asked you that a little bit earlier, but are you afraid of conflict or something? Like, it's like that's what, the second you find out who these people are, I would assume you would want to find a way to contact them. I mean, so I know you said you weren't a journalist, and I appreciate that. But I feel like journalism is conflict. Journalism is uncomfortable, So I'm wondering what stopped you from going that extra length, because the biggest thing that you could potentially produce, in my opinion, would be to hear from them.
Right.
Yeah.
I was just of the mindset of like, I'm not, I guess you can say I am and am not out to get these guys. I'm here talking about their identities and where they come from and everything. But I was under the assumption of like, there's no way that they would want to talk to me, especially if you dig around what I do and you see I work in the media, not the games media, but media in general, right? And I assume they don't want that kind of attention. Because from what I see in their patterns of releases, the types of games they put out, how they advertise those games, these people are very clearly trying to adhere to only the people who just want easy trophies and just want to boost their PSN profile numbers. So if I was to come at them and be like, hey, I'd like to talk to you about your business and everything, I highly doubt they would. I highly doubt that I would ever hear back from them. So.
Yeah, I would just say you never know until you ask, because I email and message and DM and fucking fill out forms on a constant basis, basically, and almost never hear back from people. You just, every once in a while you do. I just ask people constantly, what do you think of this? And do you have any comment on this? I'm looking into this. And I don't want to scoop you, but with your permission, I'm going to reach out to some of these people.
Yeah, of course. That was the point of this whole thing, really.
And again, I mean, it said it at the top, because you were saying the idea of getting them, kind of. It's like, I don't want to get anyone. I don't give a fuck about that. I want the story. Like, whatever the story is what I want. Like, when I started investigating, for instance, and being at the nexus of the center of investigations around Abandoned and her Hassan Karaman, I didn't know how fucking crazy it actually was. I wanted to know what the game was and what he was doing. What ended up happening was it all fell apart after that. Yeah. But I wouldn't have known if I asked. And sometimes you go in with the even best intentions. Like, are you hiding something? Are you a fucking auteur like Kojima guy? But no, it wasn't the case. And the only reason we knew that is because we went and investigated. But for every one of those messages I send where they go, he answered. For every one of those, there's 20 that go unanswered. And that might very well be the case with these guys, like it was with Breakthrough Gaming. But I want to continue to try to get their take, because especially these Slovakian dudes, they might be able to sit down with us should your instincts about the government funds be right. They might be able to sit down with us or with me, whatever, and just email or have a dialogue and say, like, this is kind of the way it works. First of all, you're way off base about how many games we're selling. We're selling way more than you think. Second of all, we have this funding, or we have this system, and it works for us, and this is how much money we make. And you never know what you get until you ask. So they might be able to explain it where I'm like, this is pretty craven, but okay, I guess it makes sense. But from my perspective, Ty, the reason I'm mad about it is Legion, really, because it's like, well, I'm mad that you're taking up space. I'm mad that you're injuring other indies and other games and their visibility. I'm mad that you're charging so little for your games, undervaluing everyone else's games. The amount of money you're charging for games makes no sense, because I assume you're not selling very many, and so you're not making any money. I don't understand why Sony is allowing this to happen. And I guess that comes to my next question. What about Sony? I mean, certainly now they hate me. I mean, it's gonna be hard for me to get any comment from them, but I guess I'll try. But I would really love to know what they're thinking. This isn't happening on the other consoles. I don't think even like these games aren't, I don't think, appearing there. So someone somewhere is saying no, where PlayStation is saying yes. And I wonder if you have any insight into that at all.
I don't, but I am with you on your levels of frustration with Sony, particularly when I look at what Sony is saying and doing around the press and everything. Like, they have this habit of touting themselves as the premium experience, right? Like, how many times have we heard Jim Ryan or some other higher up at PlayStation talk about how subscription services and stuff, how Xbox Game Pass, there's no interest there, and blah, 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 right? I'm like, but you tout yourself as a premier gaming service with premium quality, yet you're allowing these games to come on the store. And what's funny is that of all these companies that I've been looking into, none of them have published their stuff anywhere else except for PlayStation. So I checked Xbox Store, I checked Nintendo eShop, I checked Steam, I even checked Google Play Store and Apple's App Store. None of them are on any of those platforms, just PlayStation.
And I just think this brings us closer to this idea. I hate that people say it, and I understand it works, but Apple Arcade specifically being some sort of paid curation device, is that really what we want on PlayStation Network? Is that like, because that's where we're going, where you can't, I don't even bother really looking anymore. I try to use like some sort of cross-reference of Gamatsu and Push Square and other things to find games, because I'm not going to stumble across anything anymore. It's just not going to, it takes too much time and too much work. I am so sad for the games that are coming out. I have a platform to sell our games. Sacred Symbols is a huge platform to sell our games, and our games, Perils is not doing great because I think games are just not selling well right now. But we sold thousands of copies of that game, and we've sold 10, 15, 20,000 copies of some of our other games, which is way more than a lot of these games sell that are coming out that are earnestly trying to find you, that are earnestly trying to be purchased, that deserve your attention. And I would be in that position, and an even worse position than we are, really, if I didn't have Sacred Symbols to at least try to bring the games to people's attention in some sort of way. So I really feel like I'm fighting in some sense for the sanctity of the indie space on PlayStation, which used to be really vibrant and important. They were a little late to the game after Xbox Live Arcade, I think, really put a boot up their ass. But right. PlayStation Network really had, especially in the PS4 Vita era, awesome indie games and a wonderful incubation kind of pipeline that netted dividends. And I'm just telling you that a lot of indie developers are not happy. They're not happy with PlayStation. They're not at all. And I think Sony thinks by saying things like we're lowering the barrier to entry, we want it to be easier to publish on PlayStation. I don't think anyone's having a problem publishing on PlayStation. It's obviously not very hard. I mean, it's not. We do it and these guys do it, and there's clearly no rules. So what are they even trying to say about PlayStation Network? And I've said, so people ask Ty, and I'll just leave it here for myself, but they ask, what are your solutions? And I'm like, well, my solutions are pretty heavy-handed, I think. But this is a closed market. This isn't the open market. This isn't just the fucking market. It's a market on a market. It's something that's closed. It's a store.
Yeah.
And so what would I do? I'd be like, there's a rule there. I've said over and over again, Sony should invest in a council of 10 or 12, or maybe even an odd number of people, that their entire job is just to vet the PlayStation Store. And I know it sounds crazy, but there are jobs that are even crazier than that PlayStation does already. There are people that pour through your games looking for trademark signs. There are people that pour through your games making sure that the button prompts are right. Famously, of course, Telltale published, I think, Tales of the Borderlands on PlayStation with the Xbox button prompts. Like, things like that usually don't happen because they do watch out for that. You're not going to use the name PlayStation on PlayStation without that trademark thing on the end of it. They'll find it. But if you want to publish the Jumping Taco, they have nothing to say about that either, as long as the PlayStation name has the trademark sign after it. And so they should empower a group of people that their entire job is not to tell you if a game is good or bad, but rather belongs. And you can look at a game and know if it belongs or not.
Exactly.
And so I think that is, and I also think that they should adopt, and I can't believe that we're even back to this position where too much of a good thing in some sense, but a Nintendo style limit on yearly publishing. And people say, well, look at what Konami did when they spun off Ultra and they made another company, and then they could get another 5 games on Nintendo. And I'm like, yeah, Nintendo let that happen. They're not dumb. If you can have your rules in place or not, but at least make it difficult so that if a developer wants to play around like these guys do, it's like you have 5 options, whatever, 3, 10, whatever. You have that many slots over the next 12 months. So fill them with whatever you want. And most developers will be like, dude, we can't even fill one slot in the next 4 years. So we're good. But a lot of these guys are going to have to. So I really think that it requires that heavy handedness. Otherwise, Ty, the only thing that's going to clean this up is a subscription service that acts as a curation device. And I'm kind of wondering if Sony's trying to engineer that. Like, if they're trying to say, like, we just have too many games, So we want to make sure to bring you your eyes toward. I mean, how else can you look at it? Someone's asleep at the Switch. Someone's totally asleep.
Yeah, absolutely. Somebody suggested this on Reddit too, and I've been thinking about it for a while now, ever since this started becoming a major problem. But Steam allows you to at least block publishers and developers that you don't want to see products from, which I've done that. I've exercised that, and my Steam experience is better than it ever could be. And
I'm sure it is.
Yeah. And
they seem to give a shit.
Yeah, it's like they need to understand that this is not just we're not saying this game doesn't need to be here, it shouldn't belong there, right? It's an image problem as well for them. You look at Nintendo eShop, right? And you see all the indies that are on there every single day, right? At least a good chunk of them look somewhat decent, right? And then you look at PlayStation Store. I want to just rage quit and stop playing on my PlayStation just looking at these games. I can't tell you how many times I've looked at the store and I'm like, I'm not even going to freaking bother. I'm going on my Xbox. So it's ridiculous. And it's even more ridiculous when you look at a company like S-Mobile, which we briefly touched upon. And if I may, I'd like for us to kind of like go into that one just a little bit.
Yeah, please.
So this is a company that has, I really don't want to call them liars straight up, but some of the way they present themselves on their social media and everything kind of, it seems sketchy. So they published their first game back in 2017, and I remember this game because you and Chris, when you were doing the drop on Sacred Symbols, you briefly looked at this game. It's called Bricks, and it's a brick breaker with like a bunch of anime waifus on it. You break the bricks, and it reveals the sexy lady, right? And they didn't publish much until 2018, 2019. They started gearing up, and then 2020 is when we started seeing like the mess from them. The Ninja Head-to-Head, Ninja Run, Ninja Fun, Ninja Break, Sushi Break, Sushi Run, Sushi. And
it's really, and the only difference between these games is the assets, right? Or are the assets everything else is relatively the same in these games. These are straight up flips of right.
It's just asset flips. It's no different than what Digital Homicide did.
And they're released on PS4 and PS5 to mine trophies, and then they're released in multiple territories to mine trophies. So
yes.
So okay, so you know, it's a shame because that's what I always tell people when they're like, I have this many trophies, I'm like, I don't really give a shit about that anymore. I haven't cared about that in several years. I'm actually more curious about what you're playing and how completely you're playing good games. Like I have 132 platinum trophies, but I would say most of them are by far none of them are these games, not even one of them. I don't have any of these bullshit trophies at all. But even there are games that I want to delete my trophies because I'm like, that only took me a few hours. It just feels stupid, or I only have 1% of this or whatever. This puts it to a whole nother level. And I think that Ty is another outlet that I'm going to pursue anyway. I mean, you can do whatever you'd like, but is like, who is buying this shit and who is playing it? Like who? I know it's the trophy people, but who? Like who out there is going to be like, I'm the one who bought every one of these games, and I'm going to tell you why I want all of these digital accolades that make me look like a fucking psychopath.
Yeah.
Because there's one thing, there's a certain sort of psychopathic nature to having 132 trophies, 132 platinum trophies. But what if they were 132 platinum trophies that I got just because I played a game and I wanted to stack them all up? I feel like that's a deeper level of psychosis.
No,
Much deeper.
Yeah, I get it because I do a lot of trophy hunting myself, right? I am just a few shy from you, man. I'm at 127.
Nice.
But
you're probably going to catch up. I'm slowing down. I'm slowing down in my old age.
Not to sidetrack too much, but dude, I have when you were active on Twitter, there were a handful of times where you would post platinum number whatever, and I'm like, damn it, Moriarty.
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, I don't do that anymore.
Nah, it's cool. But I'll admit I have platinumed some pretty horrible games, but I did it only because of researching for like worst games of the year or whatever, right? Or because I was legitimately like, okay, this is a cheap game. What's the quality of it like really? Like I platinumed to this game called Football Game, horrible title. Looked decent, but horrible game. I would not recommend it to anybody, but I'm glad that I played it because I experienced it and I can tell you firsthand, awful game. Instead of looking at it and saying, oh, $5, not even worth my time, you know? But there's a difference between even that kind of game and then what S Mobile is putting out, which, like everybody else, all of their games only on PlayStation, and yet they can boast about how they have 250 trophy lists across this one platform. You know?
I don't understand why Sony is allowing the system to be abused to the point of breaking it. Like they're breaking it.
Yeah.
And like, I would love for them to just be like, we're refunding everyone that ever bought these games, like the money that they like are cut of the money, and we're erasing all this shit. Like, it's so weird because it just makes the system worse and worse and worse and more meaningless.
Exactly.
And it's ironic that the other companies, and strange really that the other companies saw what PlayStation refuses to see.
Exactly.
It's a real shame. It really is.
Yeah, it is. And it sucks too, because like, I'm proud to say that I'm a trophy hunter, you know? And I'm one of the few people working in games media who does actively hunt for trophies, right? But it sucks when you come across somebody who looks at that and laughs and is like, oh, you play games for a digital pat on the back? And it's like, well, when I see these games, can I really blame them for that kind of impression when they hear the word trophy hunter? or the phrase trophy hunter.
Right. That's why I hope that I always encourage people to look at my trophies just to see what I'm playing, because I leave it open for everyone. But it's I encourage people to look at them and just see, like, I'm not playing the nonsense. Like, that's not me. So you can't hide it. I don't know how you would do it. I guess you could hide it on PSN profiles, but I don't know. So I really feel like that's another angle. Like, I need to talk to Sony, or at least like someone's got to talk to Sony. Someone's got to talk to the people that are buying these games, and then the various people at the tops of these companies, I think, are fair game for normal inquiry. Just I'm going to find an email or a form to try to find and talk to some of these folks, because
absolutely. Yeah. I feel like you, or even Maddie, or somebody out there could do a much better job at like going through all this than I could. Just because I'm like, I even said it in my last update, which I posted last night. I'm like, I am mentally spent, man. I just digging through and seeing all of the garbage that has been tainting the platform, that has been tainting the impression that you hear from trophy hunting, that has been flooding the indie game market and making it look worse. You know, we still live in an era where people are like, oh, this doesn't look, AAA quality, and they act like that's a horrible thing,
Yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, like, it sucks, because, like I said at the beginning of the show, I champion indie games. I found a lot of amazing games that I've come to love over the years, and to see these attitudes from people of like, oh, that's not good enough for me, and then you have this kind of shit uploading on the PlayStation Store, it's super disheartening.
It is disheartening. It's just a bad look for everyone. I do not see the upside other than just the small amount of money that you can make very easily. Is it worth it? It's just, I think someone has to answer for that. Like, I really do think that someone at PlayStation has to answer for their pipeline from pitch to publish, and explain why the same real estate is given to the Jumping Taco Turbo, or whatever the fuck it's called, and TMNT Cowabunga, whatever collection, or whatever. Like, it's nonsense. It's offensive. It hurts the people that actually matter to the PlayStation Store, which are the developers of the actual games that people actually play. Those are the people that you need to placate. And any other answer, like when people are like, well, they fixed it, now you don't see things in the order that they're released in. I'm like, that's not an answer. The games are still there, and people want to see the games by the order they're released. They look every week.
Yeah.
So, I used to look all the time, and now you're just clawing through shit. And like I said, the days of the Kemco monthly JRPG, quaint. I mean, I feel bad for ever saying anything about them. At least those games take a little bit of effort. Like, there's a little bit of work in them.
Yeah. And what's funny too is I saw that one of the publishers you worked with, I think you've worked with East Asia Soft, right?
Yeah, they publish our physical games.
Yeah, they recently published a game that I thought was shovelware called Kid Ball Adventure. I watched the trailer. I'm like, not going to lie, this game actually looks kind of fun.
Yeah, because a game with a name like that is just, you're going to assume, I mean, that's up to you to make a better name too, but that's the point, right? Everyone is losing right now. And I feel like these guys also have to answer for themselves, or I'd like to at least inquire about, what are you doing? Who do you think you are to do this to the PlayStation Store? It's strange. Everyone's asleep.
Yeah.
And the people that are justifying it, I think, are pretty loathsome. Like, oh, every game should be allowed on the store. And I'm like, no. What is the marketplace that exists where that's true? And how does that benefit a closed market like PlayStation Store? It doesn't. The curation inherent in allowing games to be published, even if it's like the Nintendo seal of quality, where it didn't really mean anything, it's like, that's at least some sort of level. Plenty of bad games have the seal of quality, but none of them were reductive like this.
Yeah.
This is predatory mobile game shit. It's garbage.
Yeah. None of them were on the level of, let me hold this for 2 minutes. That's what Brian had on his video. I linked it in my Reddit thread as well, where he went and played a bunch of the games' stuff, and he's sitting there just holding down X until the counter reaches 500 jumps. I'm like, that's not a game. That's not a game. And it's funny too, because ever since you guys started talking about it on Secret Symbols, My Name is Mayo, where I'm like, you know why that game has gotten so much attention and has 3 games in the series because there's actually substance behind it. Yes, you are just clicking on a mayo jar, but there's actually funny writing behind it as well. Like the 3rd game, not to spoil it, but My Name is Mayo 3 is about a son and a father. And it's actually a very touching story in the very last half of it. So it's like, you look at that and you want to say that's garbage? No. You need to go play that and then tell me that it's the same quality as Jumping Brownie and Jumping Nuggets.
Yeah, no, and in other words, it goes deeper. Like it certainly does. This is concerning. It's just, why does anyone want to justify moves that make the PlayStation Store like the Android or App Store? It's just, those places are disasters.
They are.
Only the most desperate people would ever release something on one of those stores and hope for anything at all by it. Unless you're an Apple Arcade, you have no prayer at this point of making money on mobile. It's done. That ship has sailed. And that ship sailed because everyone undercut each other and undercut each other and undercut each other until there was nowhere left to go but free. And that was the end. Yep. And that's what's happening on PlayStation Store. And I don't want to see that as a developer, but I really don't want to see it as a player. My developer will be fine. We'll live. And like you said, the other stores aren't really allowing this. So our games are starting to do better and better on other places. People are like, oh, your game is out on this. I'll just buy it on Steam. Oh, I'll buy it on Switch. It's like, oh, cool, man. Do whatever you want. We're really impressed with Xbox too. So I'm going to kind of sit on this for a few days and think about things. But I think next week I'm going to start. I want to talk to Brian and once The Last of Us is out, and I think he'll be more available, and just kind of pick his brain and then just kind of see if I can email some of these people and just see if we can, if I can sit down on Sacred and talk to them and just kind of get to the bottom of this. I think it'll be good. I think you've done a lot of really good work. You're on the goal line. That's why I don't want to necessarily scoop you,
No. This is why I started the Reddit thread, because I was hoping you would probably pick up on it or somebody, but after seeing, 0 upvotes on this thing because everyone's like, oh, who cares? I'm like,
well, our audience,
I gotta tell somebody. But just real quick before I forget, owner of S Mobile is a Stevan Milovanovic in Serbia, Russia.
In Serbia. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. I mean, I will have to. So Serbia, Slovakia,
Czechia.
Czechia. Yeah.
Or Czechia.
Germany. That's kind of the least Eastern European place we're going to get here. Okay.
And Utah.
And Utah, right.
Yeah.
With Breakthrough Gaming. So many different threads to pull at. And at the very least, this should act as a primer to the problem. And maybe some other enterprising minds out there will want to dig deeper too. That's what journalism is. I'm glad to give a venue to expanding the field in any way we can. I think you did good work. I appreciate the toil that you put into it. I know all about the work that goes into finding these things. And I'm a little surprised. If I were at IGN, I would have solved this a long time ago. Like I would have, because I would have been paid to do that. So I'm surprised that no one else has really, really, really gotten into it. But if they don't want to, then I'll do it. So in the meantime, this will act as a good primer to the great conspiracy of the PlayStation shovelware. And Ty, I appreciate you. Do you want to tell people where they can find you online?
I am unfortunately on Twitter at SpectreBull. And if that does sound familiar, I was on Defining Duke like several months ago, talking about freelancing in general.
Cool.
Back when the whole IGN thing was happening. But yeah, I'm on Twitter at SpectreBull. I have my own YouTube channel, which I sort of upload every now and again. Also SpectreBull. And then, like I said earlier, you can find me on Mojo Plays, which is Watch Mojo's gaming channel. I'm doing lists over there. And I upload full playthroughs of different games on Long Play Archive twice a month. Pac-Man World Remake will be my next one over the next few days. So big thank you to my colleague, Caitlin Johnson, once again. I couldn't have done it without their help. And thank you, Colin, for having me on. I had only emailed you because, like I said, I was hoping you would pick up on it or something. But it was fun to come on here and talk about this with you.
No, I appreciate it. I'm glad to give you the venue to talk about your own work. We try to cite everyone and relay all the information we can, but if I can hear it from the horse's mouth, as it were, I'd much rather do that. So there's more work to be done here. I'm curious to see what Brian has to say about this as well. I'll have to wait a few days for that, but this is the beginning. I don't think this is the end. There's much more story here. And is it like the biggest controversy and conspiracy in the world? No, but it's certainly like one of the most interesting things I've encountered in the games industry in a long time. And I'm actually a little surprised how lazy everyone is out there. It's like, Jesus Christ, like, where are the journalists? Where are you? I try to get out and they just keep clawing me back in over and over again. So we'll get to the bottom of this, but Ty, thank you for your time, and thank you all out there for your love, kindness, and support of Sacred Symbols and Last Stand and all the rest. We'll see you next time for more. Until then, goodbye. Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast, is a product and trademark of Last Stand Media and Colin's Last Stand LLC, and is proudly recorded in the USA. The show was conceived by, is written by, and is directed by me, Colin Moriarty. My co-hosts are Chris Raygun Maldonado and Dustin Furman. The show is produced by executive producer Dustin Furman. It's edited by associate producer Ben Smith. All of Last Stand's theme music is by my best friend, Ramon Narvaez. As you know, all of Last Stand's shows, including Sacred Symbols, are fan-funded on Patreon at patreon.com/laststandmedia. The following names are at the producer level on Patreon, our highest tier, and we're grateful for your thoughtful and kind contributions to our independent endeavor. Thank you.